Well, top of the morning, y'all. It's Wake Up Missoula time, and I'm Scott Ramp. I'm here to usher you into the week end of St. Patrick's Day. So if you plan on going out for St. Patrick's Day, make sure you guys drink responsibly, drive safe, and avoid Butte at all costs. Anyways, moving nothing against Butte, but you know who you are. Moving on. Silicon Valley Bank failed, and the Federal Reserve has saved the depositors nearly $130 billion of big tech money was on the line. More than 5,000 startup CEOs and founders pleaded with federal officials for support as reports circulated of startup founders unsure of how they would be able to pay employees if their money was tied up in the um, Silicon Valley Bank. The bailout, which isn't necessarily called a bailout, it's kind of like how we change homeless to houselessness. But regardless, they say that no taxpayer money will go towards this, but the Fed will be paying to basically their employees to help kind of mitigate a lot of the process in that. So in many ways, indirectly, we might actually end up paying in the way. So what I understand is that the bank froze and no one could access their accounts, but with the Fed taking over, would open the doors for bigger accounts to access 100% of their assets. From what the recent reports have shown, that some of the investors of the bank have gave themselves bonuses and might have told their big tech buddies to jump ship as well, thus creating the rush to get their money out and hence their collapse. The Fed might also look into emails, texts, and other messages before the collapse to determine if they knew about this. Banks were weird in the recent years. Regulations have opened the doors, and bailouts from 2009 only put band-aids on banks that too big to fail seems to be a joke at this point. President Biden has reassured depositors that they should still have access to their money, and then the stock market took a dip. This kind of world we live in without checks and balances, it seems people would rather make money than actually look what real value is. Money is only as valuable as we make it, and the U.S. is kind of going crazy with spending money. And speaking of money, looks like the U.S. also plans to sell nuclear subs to Australia. This was kind of on the heels of a past story that got some folks in the UK hot and bothered that Australia didn't consider their proposal for subs as the U.S. aims to grow their newer sub program as tensions with China grows in the sea just south of China. Wall Street Journal reports that Chinese leader Xi Jinping will visit Russia this week and apparently remotely to Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine. BBC reports that China wants to remain neutral while at the same time economically tying themselves up with the natural gas-rich country of Russia. The Ukraine war to China is not that special. Is not, according to them, is special operations, but frankly don't really care about the perspective is to only save for the benefactors of this war, whether that be U.S. and NATO allies to Russia's Kremlin. Investments have been made, and in business of war, no one wants to walk away with nothing to show for it. That and the U.S. are tens of $billions in the hole in this one. China pretty much solved the Iran-Saudi beef, and not a shot was fired. So Wang Yi, Chinese top foreign official, met with Ali Shamaki, the Secretary of Iran's Security Council, Mashaj bin Mohammed al-Ban, Saudi Arabia's Minister of State, in Beijing on Friday. This comes at the heels of U.S. arms deal with Saudi Arabia sunset, as Saudi Arabia and Iran have used Yemen as their pawn for their beef. Sound familiar? President Biden's White House has publicly welcomed the reestablishment of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran and expressed no overt concern about Beijing's part in bringing the two back together, according to the New York Times. The key agreement, according to what the Saudis told Americans, was a commitment by Iran to stop further attacks on Saudi Arabia and curtail support for military groups that have targeted the kingdom, reopen embassies in the regions, and reduce military operations on both sides. Chinese takeover of the world seems like they'll never need to fire a shot and perhaps give Russia an offer they cannot refuse to end the conflict with Ukraine. And overall, this seems like Iran, Russia, and China have aligned their interests in this modern times, and Saudi Arabia is in the middle of it all. And so let me break this down. It's kind of like the U.S. had the ball and it's this playground and made the rules for some time now, and Iran was that impossible kid that American didn't really want to deal with, but still kind of had to put up with. Saudi didn't want to play with Iran, but they were the rich kids, so we really couldn't say anything about it. China came in with a big, shiny new ball, and U.S. was put on the sidelines only so you watch as they got to play with everyone but the U.S. You got to create a safe environment for people to talk it out with, and China was like, hey, the U.S. kind of sucks. You guys want to play something else? And however you get in too deep with the communist-type country, Not only do you get many of the bad things from giving up certain independence, but freedoms begin to erode with the promise of security and full stomachs. Say what you will about China, they got something the U.S. pretty much gave up on and totally dunked on us. Sports and game analogies aside, in Montana, Governor Greg Gianforte signed a series of bills coined the six-pack of tax reform. The Missoula Current article followed a series of bills that went in to tackle tax rebates, corporate tax simplicity, and as far as reducing income tax from 6.5% to 5.9%. With a $1.9 billion surplus paying off the $150 million debt, we'll also look into preventing Montana from going further into debt in the future. The $500 tax rebate for property owners will go into effect and will cover 2 years, put money back in the pockets of Montana homeowners. House Bill 267, sponsored by Representative Courtney Brunger of Kalispell, places $100 million into the new state account where it can be used as matching funds to secure federal roads and grants. Missoula is taking advantage of a series of grants for the Higgins Corridor in conjunction with the Build Back Better bill passed in 2021, and this could help communities improve their infrastructure. The story goes into more detail about other bills, but that one caught my eye because infrastructure is poor and it looks like Montana is invested in improving in our state. House Minority Leader Ken Abbott of Helena and Senate Minority Leader Senator Pat Flowers of Belgrade released a statement Monday repeating the opposition and, quote, what the governor signed into law was over $1 billion in reckless spending that disproportionately benefits the wealthiest Montanans, they said. It does nothing to help working and middle-class families to get through the cost of living crisis. The way this package was structured and rushed raises questions about this constitutionality. In the continuing absence of any real plans for the GOP, Montana Democrats will keep fighting for the crisis facing ordinary Montanans, end quote. Many Dems, especially from Montana, wanted the state to invest in mental health services and help people on the lowest parts and lowest levels to get access to affordable housing. One of the most notable bills, House Bill 192, set aside $480 million of the surplus to provide income tax rebates, and this would be up to $1,200 for those filing for individually and $2,500 for those filing jointly in terms of rebates. Rebates will be available later this year since the legislation is more than a month away from wrapping. While the U.S. homeowners are getting paid, future homeowners in Missoula are looking to pay $500,000 for a basic home in Missoula. The Missoula Organization of Realtors came out with the Missoula Housing Report, and with that comes a $520,000 median home value for new homeowners in the city of Missoula. Three factors from cost of living, housing stock, and interest rates are playing a major role in making it difficult for folks to survive in Missoula. Living in Missoula has always been difficult, but at least we could rent for between $300 and $750 a month depending on roommates and the choice of living alone. Also, crappy homes also allowed for cheap living, mobile homes, and that kind of thing. And Missoula is moving forward with a lot of those things with programs like NeighborWorks. And so with high demand for housing stock, developers have found places to build high density on par with Missoula's needs, but failed to provide adequate affordability to retain Missoula residents. The rental market, according to the report, went up by 1.2% vacancy, to about 2.4 vacancy, which is going to be and their goal for the city is to have about 8 to 5% vacancy rate. Thus, you don't have to have along those long waiting lists, and you don't have to deal with the fact that moving out of your current situation might be a lot more difficult than just staying where you are. So I was driving down Pine and saw an old house that was renting for anyone wanting to rent there. It's downtown, probably expensive. Average rent increased by more than 11% in 2022, including a nearly 10% increase in renting a two-bedroom house and a 16% in renting a two-bedroom apartment. To buy a new home in Missoula, 20% down of $250,000 is roughly $104,000. Not many people have that kind of scratch just lying around. And also, they went further into this, and they would say that this would require families to earn at least $134,000 a year to even consider this, and that is roughly the equivalent of making over $60 an hour. So good news? No. Those of you lucky enough to survive the storm and keep your homes will still have to deal with rising property taxes. So there's really not much of a positive note to look forward to on a lot of these, but I just wanted to kind of like let that be known, as that was one of the more recent news happening in the city of Missoula. I won't be here next Friday. I'm going to probably repeat this later in the show, but up next, enjoy some colorful array of videos made by our Saturday drop-in kids. So here it is. It's time for summer in Montana, and why wait when MCAT is offering summer kids programs for the months of July and August. For 3 weeks, we will bring back our stop animation camps for kids getting used to production and video editing, followed by our horror camp for more advanced filmmakers. But that's not all.
Wonder how long he's gonna keep us waiting.
Yeah, he just keeps staring out that window.
Through these camps, kids will learn how to create stories and bring them to life and make lasting friendships along the way.
Let's go!
Log on to MCAT.org to sign up or call us at 542-MCAT. Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this week. And there's quite a few movies coming out this weekend too, but I'm going to kind of highlight the main focus of some of the movies that are coming out this weekend. Kicking things off with your Pre-Critic segment, which is mostly about just me judging a movie based on absolutely no context. But since this movie, I've seen the original, and I'm probably going to see this one. I might not actually see this one, but Shazam 2, Fear of the Gods, are in full swing in the sequel that grants the main character a childlike fantasy of superpowers. Enjoy a series of tropes from the whole sham damly in this movie about growing pains after first one covered many characters' arcs along the way. Watch as gods come from all around and be like, your power is not yours, it's mine. Fight, fight, fight. Good guy defeated. But he has to overcome his failure to defeat the bad guys in the end, because that's your typical superhero movie. All right, then, oh, no, that's not what I was wanting to do. There we go, jumping right into the next one. This is basically one of those movies where it's just like, oh, can't we just hire like an actor and then just like an apartment and then just film the whole movie there? It's like, cool, this is it. This movie's called Inside. Watch a solo journey of an actor who tries to carry this movie Inside, starring Willem Dafoe in all his near nudity, about a man who is stuck inside a rich person's house on lockdown after he tries to steal art from the wrong billionaire. Expensive prisons must be an allegory for them rich snobs out there to give the rest of us money for no good reason, and have William Dafoe character just kind of like make things work in this apartment, because we all have to try to survive living in an apartment complex at some point. But back to the rich people, they have to contribute just like everyone else. Anyways, speed around. Noise. Noise is about a guy who has come home to a big home in the middle of nowhere, but finds something worse than his dead dad had left him. The plot. Then we got Snowy Day in Oakland. It's a Hallmark-esque kind of movie who moves from a big city to a childhood home, sound familiar, to start a new law firm, only to fall in love. Enjoy a run-of-the-mill, low-stakes movie. Also, the synopsis says that the main gal is beautiful, because that makes all the difference. Finally, we have this movie, American Cherry. This movie is about an American as Cherry, but also follows a... Okay, sorry, I got to restate this, because I actually, when I finally looked at it, it's a lot better. Okay, this movie is as American as Cherry Diarrhea, but follows a young man who has one emotion, anger. Watches a teenage boy played by a 20-year-old help this fixer-upper. Okay, speaking of fixer-upper, I need to work on that a little bit. But up next, we have a new Dubbin Stuff from the 1954 movie Black Tuesday.
Kinda cold in here. Catching a chill. Gotta put this thing on.
Well, spring is around the corner, my son.
Father, I don't need your sass right now. Fine.
You cannot just pretend to work on your little gadgets to ignore me.
Well, you should ask my mom about Connects. She'll give you an earful. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. There we go. That looks pretty good, don't you
Fixing
think?
things won't fix your problems. I hope you know that.
Humans aren't so different from machines, you know?
You don't say.
We're all gooey and soft. These are all
Okay, then.
hard and...
What are you, then?
I'm a man at the end of his rope. I'm just trying to do what I can. We all have coping mechanisms. Some of us use comedy. Some of us try to talk like Paul McCartney or something like that. It's weird. Do you suffer from Beatlemania? Can you do all the impressions of all the Beatles?
I know you more than you know yourself.
Yeah, and how's that? We're voiced by the same guy after all? This is all getting kind of meta, so can we just continue about my personal problems?
You know, you can always fix machines. But can you fix a broken heart? I know it sounded really cheesy.
You know, humans are a lot more complicated than machines, you know, but I can't fix people. I can only fix machines. Therapy takes a lot more time, and time I just don't have.
People try to pivot from their problems.
What are you talking about? I don't ignore my problems. I have all sorts of problems, left and right. Problems here, problems there. I think about them all the time.
You can look in the mirror, wash your face, and still ignore yourself. These are just distractions. Television, radio.
Tinkering around with things with my hands? That's what you're going to say, right? What the?
Oh!
What's going on over here?
Sir, there's some kind of gunfire going on.
It's getting crazy out there, sir. You take the high ground. Bang. Bang. How dare they interrupt my mental health break? Get up. Bang. Sir, we can't hold him back. Huh, that sounds exactly what you're supposed to say.
Sir, where do I go?
That way? Be careful. You, do the thing. God. I was just making a breakthrough.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some city council. It's time for my city council report where they're talking about the ward boundaries. So in terms of, changing the wards and changing things, not much was really changed from last week, but I think they really kind of dove deep into some of the concerns and some things that are happening within the city of Missoula. So let's kick things off with your city council report. The ward boundaries are for final discussion, and many staffers from last Monday's meetings were worried about the Franklin to the Fort. Quote, I don't want Franklin to be treated like an old car for parts when the city needs them. Christian Jordan spoke last week about the needs for identity. Ward 3 is going to see a lot of changes in their boundaries, which is the center of basically kind of the center of it all, and Ward 6 is moving further north. Other wards will be affected through these transfers as well. And I'm really into this outcome because I'm in the Franklin and the Fort area, and that's my ward that's getting affected more than anyone. So Gwen Jones, City Council, talked about the back and forth that spilled over from the committee meetings.
I wanted to appreciate the intentionality as Mark, you created the maps and tried to make it work as best as possible for all wards. At the same time, recognizing that frankly, we are growing in Ward 6 and in Ward 2, and Ward 6 is going to be moving north, and we have a general shift going now. So I appreciate all of that. Also, we had some public comment, which I also appreciate, but I did just want to note we have some pretty narrow sideboards that we're operating on with these types of topics that come in front of us and with redistricting. And so I'm happy to support this.
All right. And the sideboard she mentions is that the state law does mandate that there has to be equal distribution between the wards, thus not to give any kind of unfair advantage, and equal distribution of services within the city of Missoula as well. So one of the big things is that I have a couple of the maps and proposals available for you as well. I downloaded them from the city's website, ci.missoula.mt.us. And as you can see here, these are ward representatives where they live in this particular town. Ward 1, it goes 2, and then it goes back down to 3, then 4, 5, 6. It's kind of weird how it kind of works. So it's just like 1, 2, and then way over here 3, 4, 5, 6, and then kind of just loops around. Ward 2 is getting bigger and bigger, and so what this is the current ward boundaries, and then they're going to jump into the proposed. And as you can see here, a big chunk of this for sure is getting changed along with some of these as well. So look at some of the center areas, like this purple spot right here is definitely a major extension of Ward 3 into Ward 6 right here. There's definitely a lot going on in terms of just how the wards are looking. So we jump right back in. So the best laid plans kind of caught some people off guard in the Franklin to the Fort area, and consideration was made, but ultimately went to the staff recommendation of Ward 6 moving more towards the other side of the river. Think about it like this. Ward 2 is getting bigger and bigger. Airport Boulevard, Expressway, they got added, but they still have to account for all those new residents. Going to be the Mullen Build Project, which is the whole new bunch of apartments, housing, mixed use, everything like that. But need I say more is that Elmer Estates, they're building a long road that basically connects from Reserve Street to Elmer. And Elmer is basically kind of like that development that kind of popped up out of nowhere. But that's not necessarily annexed in the city of Missoula, but they may or may not be annexed as they go further towards the airport. So it's kind of ridiculous because the whole point of building an airport is to be as far away from the city as possible, but it seems like the airport is becoming closer and closer to the city. But that also has to do with the fact that planes are quieter. They don't have to worry about building so far out of the way that they don't have to worry about noise complaints from the airport. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of those things get built out further out into further counties, just so they don't have to deal with the craziness. So Christian Jordan of Ward 6 was worried about the Franklin to the Fort area, and this is what he had to say in response.
I recognize that we have a lot of sideboards that we have to work within that are state mandated. And I know that it was not an easy job, but I also represent Ward 6, and Ward 6 is kind of tired of not getting the services it needs, and also being piecemealed out for various projects. And I'm here to represent my ward today, and I'm going to vote no, despite all the hard work you did, Mr. Hendrickson, and all of the other information that's come out of this process. I really want to work on this sooner so we can have more time to think creatively in the future. Thank you.
All right, and then of course, Darlene Carlino chimes in, and he is very disappointed about the whole process, in which, regardless of how long they've been working on this, a lot of people were blindsided at the fact of the ward change boundaries. So this is what he had to say.
It was kind of a facade that there was even a chance for public comment to be incorporated here. So for that reason, I also can't support the map change this time, and I look forward to doing it sooner in the future. But I did appreciate the folks from Franklin to the Fort who reached out with their concerns about this. And I really look forward to representing the part of the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood in Ward 3. I think it's a neighborhood that could definitely use more representation and more resources and infrastructure. And, I've knocked every door in Ward 3 at least 2 or 3 times, and I will definitely commit to knocking on all of the Franklin to the Fort that's part of Ward 3 now sometime this year to introduce myself and hear from everybody in the neighborhood.
So it's technically Ward 3 has always been associated with the University District, and I guess the Franklin to the Fort is somewhat now indirectly, if not directly, associated with the University District. So Sandra Fasica, Christian being joined by Carlino, the motion did pass against their best wishes to preserve Franklin to the Fort for Missoula's big picture. I covered the school boundaries, redistricting, and many parents spoke about their kids missing out on certain education because of their certain restrictions on boundaries. They also have their own redistricting, the school district, in terms of that, and many kids kind of lost out on a couple of the schools that their other siblings went to, but just because the school did some reboundaries, because they do it ever so often, and it also is based on the trends of censuses and data and everything like that, just to equally distribute kids amongst the schools. But equal distribution doesn't offset the costs and the services provided for each of the kids going to the schools in Missoula. So that's kind of what I'm going to kind of leave it there. They're going to change, and that's just the way it is. And yeah, Ten Spoon Winery was basically gifted to Missoula in the form of an easement to preserve the eggland and be able to create public trails up the Rattlesnake. Last meeting was more or less a pleasant surprise for many members who were pleased with this major acquisition of a pretty popular spot in Missoula. Zach Covington, open space project manager, talked about preserving the land during the presentation.
The conservation easement is for, as you know, Ten Spoon Vineyard and Winery. There's 8 acres of working vineyards. There's a commercial winery. Beautiful area. You've probably been up there and driven by. There's beautiful views and vistas. Beehives on the east side of the property. Maybe something that I didn't know that you may not know, but there's some good educational resources there for honey production. There's a lot of education that goes on at the vineyard itself. There's a community gathering space for educational activities, community events, weddings, and celebrations. There's a lot of wildlife that frequents the area and moves through the site, being in proximity to Mount Jumbo and closer to Rattlesnake Creek, kind of that in-between corridor.
And I always think that the Rattlesnake is kind of like one of those things, like you have to have lived in Missoula for quite some time to be like, oh, this is a nice pocket to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of the downtown Missoula urban area. So that's just one of the cool things about this area as well. I probably said too much. I like to draw comparisons to the Pease Farm, which is the city acquired for the purpose for the egg land, and potential nonprofit partnerships to help steward the land for future generations. Heck, even County Commissioner Josh Lautnick was tied in with the Pease Farm. Kind of like an extreme community garden. The city will only use 2 to 5 hours annually to confirm that the easement is continuing with no cost to Missoula anymore. So Zach talks more about the potential trails and connectivity potential with this land acquisition.
One thing that's really unique about this conservation easement is that the landowners are wanting to donate a pedestrian walkway easement across the property. That's not common with agricultural easements, so this is very unique, very generous of the landowners to do so. Generally, that connection would be between the Lincoln neighborhood and Rattlesnake Drive, and location to be determined. But that's a very unique feature of this conservation easement.
All right, so that was Zach talking a little bit more about the presentation. But then we got some folks out in the public comment section. Andy Sponseller talks about the efforts put into protecting open space.
Housing crises come and go. They're cyclical. One thing that gets less every year is land that's available for people to recreate on and people to grow things on and for animals to use. There's almost no good place for animals to go anymore. You think all the mountains out there, there's all that room for animals. Well, what's true about the climate situation that we're in is that the upper elevations really are difficult for wildlife now. Food supplies are scarce at the upper elevations, and they're being pushed off the flatland everywhere and out of the river bottoms because people find them attractive. So what does that leave for wildlife? What does that leave for the farmers? It doesn't leave very much.
And when it comes to even the human race in general, is like we like to go close to the water, to rivers, to streams, to lakes. Like if you go to like Sealy Lake, it's rare to find like any even port for the public just to get on there and do recreate. There's just a lot of places and properties just along the lakes that a lot of people may not use year round, but it's like one of those things that you think about is that there's going to be animals, going through there as well. So Jim Parker, Rattlesnake resident, comments on this easement as well.
As the campaign manager for the 1995 Open Space Bond and ensuing years spent on this city open space committee, these land types and connectors to other trails, open spaces, wildlife corridors for both human access and animal refuge and corridors was and is a primary objective. And beyond all these attributes, both neighbors and the greater community equally share in numerous events the winery and vineyard hold each year, including community grape harvests. Nowhere else around here you get to do that. Good wine, good food, a gathering place, and often music going through the valley by our local performers in the evenings of summer. Of course, tourists like to come up there and see these values too, which they don't get to interface with so close to an urban area such as Missoula. So there'll be much we lose in Missoula in the years ahead, but let's keep this parcel off that list of loss.
All right, so that was Jim Parker. There was a lot of big picture comments from protecting the eggland in more naturally areas and the idea of planting seed our grandkids can enjoy the fruits of the labor. The Food Policy Board was also shown to the acquisition and being able to have rich farmland for the city and county to strengthen their farm-to-table motives. Donna Glockler from Parks and Recreation spoke about the bigger picture as well in terms of how this could affect Parks and Rec.
It's important to remember not only what our needs are today, because they're critically important, but to remember what we might need 50 years from now. And I guess when Parks is looking, whether it's hillsides or riparian areas, agricultural lands, we're trying to help the community find that balance. And many of you have heard me say, I believe that we can provide great places that are highly dense with great access and great food sources and clean air and clean water. And if anybody can do that, Missoulians can do that.
All right, so that was Donna Glockler, Parks and Rec Director, talking more about that. In the end, the city is on track to pass the land easement to preserve the eggland for the purpose of mixed-use open space, eggland, and park. The final consideration on this topic will be finalized Monday, March 27th. Next week is spring break. The city council is taking a week off. Heck, I'm even taking the Friday off from doing my morning show. We'll have a nice filler for you guys. But I also, before I jump into events, I actually have a video I want to show you guys. And this is something that I really am interested in, and this is the Montana State Constitution. And so we released an interview with one of the surviving members of who helped draft the bill. of the Montana Constitution 50 years ago in a Helena Civic TV program. So without further ado, here is a little bit of the presentation that you guys can watch for free on MCAT's YouTube channel.
In 1889, Copper King W.A. Clark and 74 other men wrote a state constitution to serve the needs of Montana's powerful interests, with a weak governor, a secretive legislature, and special tax deals for the powerful. After 60 years under the copper collar, Montana was declared the nearest thing to a colony of any American state. The Anaconda Mining Company even owned most Montana newspapers, the Copper Press. The corporate dominance of Montana's political affairs was unique in American history. 70 years after statehood, the Copper Press was finally sold, and thousands of World War II veterans had been educated under the GI Bill. Newly enlightened Montanans wanted out from under the copper collar, and big winds of change roared across the Treasure State. Changing Montana's constitution was the top priority. Strengthening the governorship, opening up the legislature, empowering citizens. Voices of Montana women, totally silenced in 1889, rang out loud and clear for these changes. When the Constitutional Convention began, 19 women were among the elected delegates. And when the delegates came together in convention, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, men and women, young and old, sat alphabetically as equals, Montanans just wanting to make their state better. And so they did, producing a constitution for the ages, the last best constitution. Now at its 50th anniversary, Evan Barrett and real history makers of the time shine a light on the creation of this remarkable Montana Constitution.
You were in the legislative committee, is that right?
Right.
And so in that case, you've done some studies related to that, it sounds like.
Well, yes. So, I mean, most delegates got their first choice of committees, and the legislature was my first choice because, one, I had done some work at the legislature and a roll call analysis and studied that. And then also I felt that our legislative branch, which is the people's branch, was really the weakest branch of government. And so I was very keen on trying to equalize these three branches of government.
Yeah, so it's a really great program that I suggest you guys watch, and it is available on MCAT's YouTube page. And I'll repeat it again, it is a very important part of Montana's history, not to mention the history that came after. A lot of times, in terms of history, you know, it's like we live in the moment, but then we look at the really far history in which, you know, there's not many people who are alive today to speak for what happened then, and then we only refer to the books that were written at the time, which, if you know from now, a lot of the books that are written now have a lot of hubris in there, so you got to be very careful about how you perceive the past. But in a lot of ways, the Montana Constitution from 1972 kind of basically took a lot of the bad things that were happening from the Copper Kings, the whole idea of that. And I always like to remind people that if you actually go to Helena, you can go see a giant copper dome into the state capitol building, basically a constant reminder that the business interests have always had influence over our state of Montana, and that Constitution was a good strike to keep that in place. So moving on, it's St. Patrick's Day, and we have all the green to spend your green on today. So DraftWorks, they're doing a kickoff event starting at 10 a.m. and DraftWorks St. Annual's Patrick's Day Shenanigans is Friday, March 17th, and you can bet your pot of gold they'll be throwing in a unforgettable Get Down. Music performances start at 12 noon with fiddle by Holly Riley. 3 p.m. Celtic Dragon Pipe Band will be there. Missoula Irish Dancers at 5 p.m. And then at 6 p.m. wrapping the night up is Blue Shadow Blue Quartet. St. Patrick's Day Corned Beef Feast by Friends of Irish Study. And this is going to be at St. Anthony Parish Life Center and meet real Irish. It's going to be at 217 Tremont Street. It's at the Church St. Anthony Parish, and it's going to be from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Imagine Ireland, Imagination Brewing Company, is doing traditional Irish music session with Imagine Ireland from 5 to 8 p.m. Cranky Sam Public House is going to have some Irish dancers at 6:15 p.m. 3, the Zach with Art for Ale, Bonner Kettle House, family-friendly St. Patrick's Day event, and all supports of Missoula's Community Arts Center. The Zach Kettle House has brewed a very special beer dubbed Art for Ale by Zach Staff, a West Coast style IPA with experimental hops, and $1 for every pint sold goes to the Zootown Arts Community Center. And they also have an event happening at Karis Park tonight as well. I do want to double check that just to make sure you guys know. It's the Backcountry Brew Fest is at Karis Park, 5 to 9 p.m. tonight. So you guys can check that out. Irish, probably all the bands that you see. There's any kind of Irish band is going to be that's playing at different places, probably going to be jumping all around the city of Missoula. But we're going to talk about some of the events happening this weekend as well. As always, the Missoula Public Library hosts Tiny Tales and Storytime every Friday from 10:30 to about 11, Yarns and Watercolor at noon, and plenty of other events in the community. Missoula Food Bank is open from 10 to 1 p.m. for folks looking to get some cheap food. And if you're kind of struggling with a food budget, this is a good opportunity for people. They don't discriminate. You don't need snaps. You just need to show up and be like, hey, I'm just looking to shop some food. And they just say, yeah, go ahead, get some food. Backcountry Brewfest, like I said, feeling a little lucky. Backcountry Brewfest Hunters and Anglers, March 17th, 5 p.m. as they shamrock and roll the Backcountry Brewfest presented by Mystery Ranch. Come St. Patrick with fun games, live music, food trucks, raffles, and of course some of the best beer across Montana. New Naturalist Field Station. If you want to learn something for your St. Patrick's Day, they're doing, and Montana Natural History Center is doing their rotated Naturalist Field Station. It's going to be hosting Kelsey Turner. Kelsey's work has its roots in field journals, still life paintings, abstraction, and the curious treasures with which her children fill their pockets. She is delighted when art, science, conservation, and spirit overlap. Gingers and on Ice is going to be at Suite 2. Once a millennia, two grumpy redheads find each other and combine their talents to form a potent comedy explosion. Thank your God for the alive and the okay, so now that's a lot of hubris right there. But it's a duo, and they're doing a bunch of fun stuff with Alex Tate and Jacob Godby. This duo's new show turns the spotlight on audience, asks legitimate questions, and you'll get legitimate advice. It's kind of like improv, stand-up, music, and also helps getting the audience involved as well. So if you're worried about being put on the spot, I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Cheap Date Night. Missoula Public Library hosts a cheap date night. They're going to be hosting the film The Fabelmans, based on Steven Spielberg's life of growing up and everything like that. Is a coming-of-age drama about a young Steven Spielberg character named somebody named differently, just to kind of like separate himself in some ways, but still kind of incorporate his own life story within The Fabelmans, which kind of follows the fall of his parents' marriage and his just life of becoming a filmmaker to not only deal with it, but also just do something that's fun. Socialize with socialists. If you're a socialist and you want to be hang out with other socialists, go to Union Club. It's starting at 6 p.m. tonight. 43rd Annual Buddy DeFranco Jazz Festival. So this weekend, the Buddy DeFranco Jazz Festival is in high gear. It's a big thing for the music program. They got a lot of great people coming down to be part of the clinics and help kids with the continuation of the culture of jazz. America's only form of music that was created. So fun with that. Copper Mountain Band is going to be at Sunrise Saloon. Some country music if you're interested in that. Dead Hipster is a 90s dance party. It's a Y2K dance party at Monk's. So if you have the nostalgia and you're roughly my age, that's basically the place to go if you want to. It's up to you. Who cares? And then that kind of wraps up your Friday. So there's a lot of the shenanigans happening here in town. I'm sure there's a lot of people going to Butte. Be careful. Saturday markets and such are happening on Saturday. Orchard Homes has their market from 8 to 1 p.m. and also the Southgate Mall does their winter market as well. We're going into springtime, and I believe probably late April, early May is when they're going to start bringing out those outdoor pop-ups for the farmers market moving forward. if you're somebody who has trouble using technology and you want to bring your technical device to the library to learn a little bit more, Tech Connect is to help bridge the digital divide and help you learn your tech at the library starting at 10:30 on the 3rd floor. You can come into the library and be like, hey, where do I go for this? And usually it's in the 3rd floor Ellingson conference room, but you can ask for directions as well. So Western Montana Genealogical Society Workday at Missoula Public Library starting from noon to 4 p.m. Western Montana Genealogical Society hosts a workday in the Blackfoot Room. Bring a part of your genealogical project into the gathering. Genealogists will be working on their projects and can lend a hand if needed and share website and advice on a research program. So this is kind of like an open research thing for folks who want to come down here as well. And speaking of kind of just open down for creativity, MCAT hosts a Saturday drop-ins for kids around 8 to 14. It says 1 to 3 every Saturday. It's just a workshop, and it's just for kids to come down and just create. And we try to create an environment of creativity with stop animation, Legos, and stick bots, and all sorts of things, inanimate objects that we bring to life through the power of take a picture, move it, take a picture, move a picture, roll it back. And also, Montana Natural History Center does the kids' activity as well in conjunction with our Saturday drop-ins at 1 p.m. Dillard is doing a shop for a cause. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And they say a percentage of your sale goes to help supports a chapter of Cancer Support Community Montana. Just bring your purchase to register marked with balloons. These balloons registers are both the men's and women's departments. Rock Lotto 1984, Obey Every Rule, is going to be playing some rock music over the ZAC at 7 p.m. on Saturday night. Also happening is Monks is doing a folk band called Marty Blush, Natalie Prowser, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, 7 p.m. at the Monks Bar. The last reveal is the North Fork Crossing is going to be at some bluegrass music at Free Cycles Saturday night at 7 p.m. Missoula Folklore Society Contra Dance is going to be at the Missoula Senior Center starting at 8 p.m. Tom Suzanne J. The Old Post is going to be some indie music playing it there at 8 p.m. Dueling Pianos at Stave and Hoop on Saturday night at 8 p.m. 9 p.m. West Side Lanes is doing some karaoke. Sunrise Saloon is going to be the Jaden Decker Band Country Music. And finally, for your Saturday night, it's going to be DJ Chris Moon, and he does it every Saturday at the Badlander. All right, so also I wanted to talk about MCAT's drop-ins as well. And, you know, for some adults who are just like, this is fun, I really want to do this for myself as well. For all ages, MCAT's one-day short film production. If you're jealous of kids coming down making shorts, you can too for free. And MCAT hosted every Sunday starting at 2 p.m. until about closing, which is 5 p.m. So that's happening every Sunday. I'll talk about it more and more every week. And it's just an open space for people to create and share. Dylan Albin hosts the event every Sunday at 2 p.m. So those are about that. And I'm going to wrap up my show. And I want to thank you guys for joining me. I think I talked too fast, and I'm going to have to cut it off short for you guys. So for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.